Waiting on a call from Daniel J. Edwards. He is my next guest on this brand new blog of Kirb. I'm going to put a stop to that real quick. Welcome, everybody, to Voiceoctover 2018, where I interview various veterans of the voiceover world, as it were. My guest for the New York territory, as it were, this year, in the lovely year of 2018. You know his voice from various characters, many characters in Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gundam, other various things, Juden-chan, Psychic School Wars, etc., etc. Also does a lot of stage and stuff in the New York area. I am joined by the lovely and talented, damn handsome Daniel J. Edwards. Hello, sir.
Oh, hey, how's it going? Wow,
pretty good. Yeah, wow, what an intro. I wasn't expecting blaring kazoo in my ear. Thanks for that, Niosi. So, Daniel,
yes.
So we've actually, by the way, I should point out, because I'm realizing before we started, we haven't actually seen each other in, like, years.
Like 4 years, yeah.
Yeah, because I think, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I actually met you when you were first kind of making the scene in the voiceover world. I'm sure, obviously, you've been acting for way longer than that, but you were kind of just starting, I think, when we first, it was like karaoke or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had like 1 or 2 credits. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was in town recording for Y2K with our friend Brittany Lotta, who I'm sure we'll talk about later. And since then you have made a pretty big splash. You're in virtually every show in town as multiple characters, and you're kind of a mainstay. Of course, the New York scene has changed quite a bit, even from when I was starting stuff out there. But because we really, I've only ever talked a little bit over Twitter and that one time in person, I'm going to get to know you a little bit on this here interview. So first and foremost, I want to know, can you show me, every time I'm going to do that Tarzan thing, can you show me your origin story into the world of entertainment and performing and stage, and then eventually voiceover to whatever degree you wish to share, please?
Sure. Whoa. I will make this as short as possible. Because it starts out, I was 8 years old, and I had magic feet, and I would just tap dance all over, everywhere, all the time.
Really?
Without knowing how to do it, of course. And I would do it in, baseball and soccer instead. So my parents were like, yeah, instead of you doing sports because you're not good at those, why don't you do dance and try it out and try tap dance? And so that was literally the start. 8 years old, tap dancing on a soccer field. That was when I started performing, because that's when it changed to taking dance classes. That happened throughout, up until college, and then I decided to try musical theater. This story is really long.
No, that's fine. I want to know. I'm genuinely curious because I don't know your whole deal. Dude, this is the thing. Most of the interviews I do, I'm like, I know your whole thing or whatever. I heard on some other interview, but I actually have not gotten to see a whole lot of like stuff like this with you. So I want to know. You can take as long as you want, and I have no issue with that whatsoever.
All right. So yeah. I mean, like, I started when I was 8 dancing. I moved up into like multitudes of dance: Celtic, modern dance, jazz, swing, contemporary, partnering, ballet, all that stuff throughout high school, while finding the stage and taking those dance techniques into musicals. And then around high school is when I started singing and acting as well. So I went to camps for those. I went to Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp for ballet, Interlochen Arts Camp in Michigan for musical theater summer intensives. And that's, I would train and do the things confound in Michigan primarily. And then I got to choosing a college, and it was either musical theater or dance, and I chose musical theater. So I went to Wright State University in Ohio on nearly a full ride, and decided weirdly that wasn't for me. So then I transferred to Point Park University and musical theater BA. And then came to another crossroad of moving to New York or LA, and I chose New York because I didn't have to buy a car. So
our public I've not lived in New York for several years now, but our public transit is certainly the most convenient I've ever seen in America.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, I was just so lazy, and I didn't want to drive in a big city because coming out of Pittsburgh, that's pretty big size, but I didn't drive there either, so I would have died. So I chose, New York. It's like, oh, I can take a bus or a train, so I chose that, and that's how I got into, I guess, the hardcore theater world, because that was primarily all there was. And so I got lucky. I auditioned for a lot of shows. I booked my first gig ever was Miss Saigon. CLO. It's a company. It's a musical theater. Civic Light Opera. It stands for. It's a musical theater seasonal company that just dishes out all these shows every summer. And I went on tour with the Miss Saigon version of that, which was like an anniversary thing. And then from there, I booked my first Broadway show, Anything Goes, the revival. And I guess from that point on, I kept doing theater and broke my body pretty much doing so. It's just like wear and tear. And then it wasn't until maybe my third year in New York fourth year in New York that I found voiceover. I still to this day have no idea how I stumbled upon that, because it's such a small door to walk through.
Yeah. Well, I guess going actually, first of all, a question, if you don't mind answering. How old are you?
30.
Oh, okay, you're a little older than I am, not by much. So I'm trying to place the time a little bit. So what year did you move to New York then? 2010.
Wow,
okay. That was right after I got my start, because I did my Pokemon episodes in 2009, I believe, yeah. Tail end of that. So you did you have any idea that there even was voiceover stuff in New York at all?
Not New York, no. I thought it was all in LA. So, and I had that, that thing where it was like, you're either a celebrity and you do this or you don't. So I didn't know it was a thing. I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know it was a thing I could access, which is great.
Okay. So then, yeah. So I mean, of course, moving to New York. I mean, for those of you who don't know, and I'm surprised if you don't know this, if you're listening to this, New York is, as far as I'm concerned, the theatrical, focal point of the U.S. In terms of Broadway and off Broadway. I mean, literally, the street itself has shows everywhere all the time. If you've ever seen Times Square in any movie or picture, I mean, all that stuff is there. And maybe to not much surprise, for those of you who do or do not know, that the likes of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh have been recorded out there for now about 20 years.
Yep.
A lot of the people that were in those series as voice actors were also theater guys, and some of them were radio, some of them were film, but I would say the grand majority of them were theater people. And and it's interesting because, having met you and some of the other new guys you're talking about, Eddie Lee, and then Dave Arago, who now is in LA. I didn't even realize he moved out here recently. To see you guys there primarily for that, I think is a good sign, because, I mean, in a lot of the other places, particularly in LA and Texas, there's so many people getting into voiceover specifically because they want to do just voiceover, and they just want to do animation stuff, not even commercial. I mean, just cartoons and anime and video games when they can get those, etc. But I imagine, you being around my age, I would imagine full well that you grew up with, stuff like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh being on TV, as we must have been like 12 when that stuff was first coming out. So had you seen a lot of that stuff beforehand when you were a kid?
It was, like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon came around high school. So I thought it was cool. But I honestly never watched that stuff.
Really?
It wasn't,
okay.
Yeah. I knew all about it, and I watched the movie. I remember seeing the Pokemon movie when it came to theaters, because, that was probably the height of Pokemon as far as, celebrities goes. Mm-hmm. They had a cast album of, Britney Spears and...
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was a big time for Pokemon, which is great, and they're still awesome. But, yeah, I didn't watch it until I didn't know about it until high school, so I guess I kind of missed that that phase, and I know it was around at the same time DBZ was. I was a big fan of that. But
okay. Yeah, I was just about to ask, like, what was your like gateway anime shit back in the day?
Dragon Ball Z. It was DBZ and Naruto towards my senior year, and that was it. That was all the anime I really knew.
Nice.
And Digimon.
Oh, you're a filthy betrayer. I should kick you off right now. Oh my God. I just worked on Naruto recently, actually, which was a lot of fun. That was a nice bucket list thing. Yeah. Okay, no, see, that's funny because you're not that much older than me, so I figured that would have been like right around that right age range for you, but I guess that would have been just after when, like, you know, the people your age would have been like, oh, Pokemon, so annoying, such kiddie shit, and now it, you know, yeah, people that are our age are like obsessed with Pokemon Go and Sun and Moon and all that, and it's hilarious to me that it never dies, and that probably never will.
I was that kid with the Game Boy.
Yeah.
Like, I played the games. Like, that was, without a doubt. It was just the series I think I missed. But,
right. So going back to, I guess, kind of the transition into the voiceover world as well. So the kind of consistent thing that I hear a lot from the other New York guests that I've had on in previous years is typically that, like most often I hear, I was doing a play. And then so-and-so went to go, who was directing or casting some show at whatever, you know, the few studios there are in New York left at this point, was like, hey, like, I'm working on this thing. You should come and do this or whatever. And then they get an audition, and then, you know, if they're, like, really, really good at it and really like it a lot, then, you know, they become a staple person of the, you know, the very... I would say small pool of people that do this in New York in particular. So, I mean, because I'm trying to remember, was Tom Whalen was still directing Pokemon at the time that you and I met?
Yes.
Okay, so then it was Teresa for a little while, and then of course Lisa Ortiz has been doing it for the last several years. So what was your first? And maybe it wasn't necessarily anime. What was your first voiceover role, and how did that kind of come about?
My first voiceover role was actually in Yu-Gi-Oh! It was Scritch the Barian way back in Zexal.
Okay.
When that was going on. We were recording season 3 at the time. And that was such a random privilege to be able to even audition for that. So I was doing a theater thing, and all of a sudden but I was I was doing a theater thing, but in the back of my head, I had heard a couple of my theater friends were doing Pokemon, and somehow this relates to Mike Licio because he's a theater. He knew some theater guys, and they told me about it. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I was like, wait, like people like us are doing cartoon voices and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, so I did a little research. I found Darren's class. Do you know Darren Dunstan?
Of
chance?
Of course. And everybody out there, for those of you who don't know, Darren Dunstan is not only you probably all know him best as he was the voice of Pegasus on the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's been directing the English dub since, I think, 5Ds maybe? Long time. So yeah, and he's awesome. I had, little side note, I had one audition for Yu-Gi-Oh! I have only ever been to 4Kids one time, or 4K now, once in my life. He was very, very kind. And I read for a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal characters that were absolutely not within my correct age range. So I read for, I don't remember the names, but I read for like a old, like, crazy scientist guy, and then I read for like a 40-year-old, like, you know, business suit kind of dude or whatever. And meanwhile, I'm seeing, like, on the sides on the table in the waiting area, like a kid character, and I'm like, all right, I know I'm not, like, you know, young, but that was the type of thing I was doing at the time on like Pokemon and stuff. So, right. But that was what they gave me, and then I did it, and then I never heard back from them again. So I don't know if it was because I just did such a bad... It's whatever. It's not a big deal. But I don't know if it was because I did such a bad job, or if alternatively, I don't know if maybe like someone might have found out later that I worked with Martin on Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, and maybe that might have been a point of contention or something. I don't know if that mattered. For those of you who don't know, also now, actually... 4K and Martin have a pretty good relationship, and things are totally fine. There's no big issue with that anymore. But I always thought, maybe that's what happened with that. Oh well, that's okay. So Yu-Gi-Oh! was my white whale of New York. I never conquered before I left, unfortunately. But nonetheless, sorry, I interrupted you completely. Carry on.
No, it's all right.
So Darren Dunstan, yes.
Yeah, so I took his class, and I guess I happened to be in the right place at the right time because there were a bunch of like these bug one-off characters coming up. They're like the Barians or whatever. They get like 2 episodes, and that's it. So I think that was perfect testing grounds for them to try me out. And then I auditioned for it, and I got the part, and then from there I just kept auditioning for them, and I've been lucky in getting cast and stuff. So I thought that was. And that was around the time I met Tom Whalen at the same time.
Okay, and then I think actually, how did you meet Brittany?
How did I meet Brittany? I think she reached out to me. Oh, how did I meet her?
It's a mystery.
How did we initially meet? Because oh my goodness, we had a group of people like Matt Shipman and Brittany. I met them at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, because Brittany I had known for a few years by that point, and we did Y2K.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And she's kicking ass in Texas and all that. Of course, I've had her on Kirblogs before. She's lovely. So I guess was that the funny thing? Was like once you did Yu-Gi-Oh, did your name kind of circulate around the scene, and then like basically again, there's only a few places in town that do animation and that sort of thing. So like once, here's a new guy, he's good. Like did like just the name start? This Daniel J. Edwards guy, who is he? And then suddenly you're in everything out there.
Yeah, I mean all three houses that do anime in New York found me, and they're all across the street. No, I'm just kidding. But it kind of felt that way. But it was a very slow process. Like I did Yu-Gi-Oh, and then like a half a year went by, and nothing happened. And I guess that was kind of expected because it was brand new. And all series, once you're cast in that, you're cast for years because Yu-Gi-Oh goes on forever. And so does Pokemon. Like, if you're in Pokemon, if you're one of the main characters, you can't leave for years.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I met Mikey, because I actually, little side note, I was also in the top running for, Clement. Sorry.
Nice.
Mikey's character. I was like the number 2 pick, which I was not supposed to find that out. But I met Mikey, and then I found out that he was a super, super cool guy, and he was a Pokemon fan as well, and I'm like, damn it, I can't be mad at you. But it's funny because, I was pointed out to me, because I was like binging through X and Y a couple of years ago now. Loved the show, and was a big fan of it. And when I got up to one of Clement's big episodes, I realized, like, God, yeah, if I did get that part, I wouldn't have been in LA for the last several years, and my life would have been completely different. And now you've not on Pokemon, you've not been one of like the main characters, like any of like the creatures or whatever, but you're like all over like various episodes as different guys like throughout the seasons and stuff. Yeah. My success in Pokemon isn't anywhere near the Yu-Gi-Oh thing, but I've been in quite a bit, and I feel I'm just fortunate to be in the booth. Period, because it's such a cool thing. But yeah, I was never one of the main characters. It's usually I did like your guitar solo with the rockin' Pikachu guy in that one episode. That was
Jimmy the Pokemon.
He was a fun guy. Yu-Gi-Oh, and of course the big one I think of all things was Aigami in the Yu-Gi-Oh Dark Side of the Dimensions movie. Yes. And that was a big deal because I mean for one thing, for the majority of the cast, it's the old gang back in again. Eric Stewart is not even living in New York anymore, and Dan Green, of course, is still kicking around doing a lot of stuff at Edge and all that. But I mean, that must have been, I imagine. And actually, remind me, did you take over for Mako Tsunami? Was that before or after the movie for the cell phone game?
That was just before.
Okay, so was that in and of itself? I imagine. I mean, I'm sure Funny thing with the crossover to the theater world, I'm sure you know who Andrew Reynolds is.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Big shoes to fill with that, even though I'm sure it's just a couple lines in a cell phone game, but still,
right.
That must have been interesting. Yeah, because it's so funny, because when he first got on, like, Book of Mormon and stuff, I was like, I know who that guy is. I remember when he was like a billion different Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh characters and directing all these things at 4 kids and all that, and that's surreal. But I mean, the Yu-Gi-Oh movie in particular, I got to ask about what it was like working on that in particular, because that was, even for people who had been out of Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, that was a big deal.
I mean, just the graphics comparison, going in and just seeing that firsthand, counting the beeps, doing the lines. at such a high caliber of a product was just for me it was like I was the most nervous I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I don't usually get nervous, but like for that project I was very worried that I wasn't living up to the nostalgia. Like this new character came in and I'm this guy who just appeared out of nowhere, serving coffee to Victoria's Secret models, which used to be my part-time job. I shit you not, that was an old job of mine.
Oh, then it was meant to be, clearly. I mean,
absolutely. I tie the two together all the time. But it was I was very nervous, but I'm glad it turned out well. And I'm very grateful to be, I didn't know any of these people very well, nor the characters, but I know Darren Green's voice. Like his voice is legendary because you would hear it if you turn on Nickelodeon for 5 minutes. It'll be in a preview somewhere. Like I will never forget "It's time to duel" that thing. I'm like, okay, good for you. Like you have a fierce voice.
Yeah.
So being a part of that was great. It was, like when I got into the flow of it, it was the same idea as conducting an episode, except it's about 3 episodes length or 4. And Darren is an excellent director, and I can't stress enough on how freeing I feel when I get to act with him. There, of people that I praise as directors, Darren's one of the few. He did, it just felt I could make my own choices. I didn't feel like I was imitating anyone. It was just me, and I don't know, enjoying the ride of being a villain. So that's kind of how it was, and it was over in a second, and things boosted from there.
Was that? Did you get all that done in like a day? Like was that a quick thing overall?
Maybe 3-day period.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny because the movie is way longer than you expect it to be for a Yu-Gi-Oh movie too. Yeah, I went to go see it with a whole bunch of folks, of course, and we had a great time. And it was so interesting, because I haven't seen much of Zexler Arc 5 or Vrains, of course, is the new stuff now. But it's so interesting seeing like how vastly different. Obviously, not just the show itself, because now we're in like augmented reality card games and magic card games and whatever, but compared to motorcycles and school and just playing cards. But it's so bizarre. Like I remember, we were watching an episode that Matt Shipman was prominently featured, and he was one of the major characters in Arc 5, and just even like seeing the difference in like the level of how over the top old Yu-Gi-Oh! Used to be, of like, I'm going to play this card, kind of thing. And not that it's not still over the top or whatever, but like, it's so much more grounded comparatively now. And then even seeing Dark Side of Dimensions, I mean, because Aigami's like, so like contemporary anime villain type, sort of thing. And Yugi and his friends are very like Chippy and Chippy. Oh God, they're not whores. They're all chipper and upbeat and stuff. But even then, like seeing a little bit more of a serious edge to that. I mean, yeah, the animation quality is like gorgeous. It looks straight up like Kazuki Takahashi's artwork and stuff. Yep. So now that was a real treat, and I had a lot of fun, embracing the silliness and over-the-topness of Yu-Gi-Oh! As it always is. But yeah, that was awesome getting to see that. So I'm curious also, this loops back in also with the theater stuff as well. So, in LA, there's so many people who, when they get to do voiceover, and they really become prominent, because there's just so much stuff out here comparatively. A lot of people, even I know, who were like, oh, I used to do stage and stuff all the time. They're just like, man, I just don't have time anymore. Like, the voiceover stuff keeps me so busy, and it pays better in some cases that I don't have the time anymore. But you still continue to do theater stuff, like, would you say, like, more prominently than voiceover, or is it kind of like 50-50 for you these days?
I don't know. I would say 50-50 maybe, but like I guess I'm not as gifted as those people. I think primarily most of the money that I make comes from theater.
Okay.
I would say that I feel blessed to be, main characters and in the booth every week, and I can pay my bills with that. But like I would say theater, at least the tours or the Broadway show that I did, they pay a lot of money and give health benefits. So that that helps a lot as an actor. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have more heart to be full-time voice actors, and I think there's a part of me that's always been a very physical actor kind of person that never wants to, give that up really. But it gives me more adoration for the people who can put 100% or have the time to do 100% voiceover, which is amazing. Like the people with like 200 credits on their IMDb at like our age that's insane. Which, by the way, man, congrats on everything that's happening with you. Like you've been climbing.
I do my best. I appreciate that.
You are most excellent. So I'm glad to be on your show. But yeah, I don't know. I like all this stuff. I feel like just a floating ball of performance. Whoever pops me first gets me, I guess. And yeah.
Well, I do actually, knowing that it's 50-50. Then I do ask. So, what is a day in the life of Daniel Edwards like in terms of balancing all that stuff? I mean, like theater. It's from what I know so little truly about that world, but like I imagine like it's a lot. Excuse me, I burped. It's a lot of Morty. It's a lot of time to spend. I mean, just with everything and like doing the same show. I mean, I know obviously there's differences between each night or whatever, but doing so much stuff over and over and over, like, and then also like, and then okay, now I got to go work on this cartoon today or whatever. I mean, like, what is like a week for you like, or is it just so vastly different? I guess what is life like?
All right. Well, it's let's take today for example. I skipped the gym because I'm a lazy bastard today. But usually I wake up early. I'll go to the gym. I'll wake my body up, I guess. I did about 2.5 hours of ESL this morning for. I work with a lot of ESL stuff. They record me and put me on CDs for kids, which is great, and that also helps pay the bills on top of animation voiceover. So I did that, and then I went into Yu-Gi-Oh for an hour, and then I popped down to Aladdin audition for stage, and before I came on to this show today, I've been working on. I just got an agent, so I now am represented for theater. So I've just been trying to get everything together. It's just a nonstop. You wake up, you do as much voiceover as you can, you do as much theater as you can every day, and then you go to sleep. Yeah. When I did The King and I was double dutying for a while we were doing rehearsal here. I would do voiceover sessions in between theater, or before or after, and I would just try to chain all that every day until I had to leave so I could keep up with everything that I left behind. So it's just, nonstop, just trying to juggle both. It's just never, I don't ever sleep, which is great.
Yeah. Well, being an actor, actually on the note of touring, you mentioned briefly earlier, because I remember, I think, it was World War Blue was a show that Brittany and I were working on last year, I think, like early last year. And that was something I think that we wanted you to be on, and I think you were maybe busy at the time, or maybe you were touring. I can't remember. But like, has that ever? I mean, because I don't even know what that's like with like how many places you're going around the time, and like how long that takes you away from the city, and like how that may or may not interfere with like any consistent voice jobs or whatever. Like how do you kind of manage that as well?
Alcohol. No. It's when I left for The King and I for the tour, that was an opportunity that I wanted to take for me, because my wife booked the show, and she was a crucial part of it, and I was lucky enough to also book the show and travel with my wife, and we both got to make money. We both were living on a pretty handsome paycheck and got to travel the United States and perform this really cool show directed by Bartlett Shear, who I've always wanted to work with. So it was a sacrifice knowing that I would miss a few major auditions. Like I missed main series Pokemon auditions again.
Oh, for Sun and Moon. Yeah. Oh, was that long ago now? God,
yeah.
man, that's bizarre. Oh, wow. Okay.
I had missed those, and it broke my heart because I've always wanted to be main series in something, and I felt like maybe this could be the year. But as that year came up, I ran out of money, and you know how that is. So it's like you make choices, and you don't look back, and you come back to it, and the slots are filled, and you have to start over. So I was lucky enough to make the Vrains call, though. So I'm at least now employed in Vrains. And in Pokemon, I was lucky enough to get a kind of secondary character who kind of lingers around every once in a while. His name's Faba.
Yes, of course, of the Aether Foundation. He's a creepo.
Yes, he's the biggest. He throws the Rowlite. He makes everyone angry. It's a fun time. So I feel lucky in that aspect, but it's really hard to do both. It's hard to do both.
And actually, I think I don't know who they are, but I think that if I'm remembering right from what I heard from Lisa last time I visited, I think Lusamina and Wick, I think they're both Broadway folks as well. I think maybe,
I don't probably.
We're all like really like buddy, just like the characters too, right? Yeah, totally.
They only have parties for the main cast.
You just show up to that. Just show up to that bar where they were singing the theme song or whatever. I was in the show also. I was chastising Team Rocket a lot. Sun and Moon's time will eventually close, and whatever's coming next with Gen 8 and the Switch game and all that, that may be your time to shine. So who knows? I'll certainly be rooting for you. So.
Thanks, man.
I guess also on the note of other stuff just around town, do you do like much like audiobooks or like film or any of that kind of stuff either?
Well, the agency I'm a part of now wants to put me up for TV film, and I'm slowly training, getting ready to put my, I don't know an expression to say, something ready to do it. So I'm gonna try for that. Mainly, it's right now. It's just trying to get a theater job again, so I can do both in the city if possible.
Yeah, audiobooks were one thing I'm kind of glad that I never jumped on, because the friends of mine out there that would tell me about like talking about hours. I mean, at least the hours you put into theater, you're having human interaction, as opposed to the hours you put into audiobooks. You're just like, all right, I have to listen to myself doing this for like 8,000 hours and edit it myself, and I'm just like, no, thank you, I'm good.
I would not be good for audiobooks. I would be terrible.
Yeah,
I would probably fall asleep on myself.
It's because your voice is so soothing to listen to, not because it's boring. I guess, I haven't thought to ask this to some of the other guests, but here's a question. If you were to, particularly because of the folks that, just the different kind of scene that is out in New York, if you were to give any kind of advice to any actor that wants to break into any kind of performance, whether it's voiceover or theater or otherwise, what is the one thing that has helped you the most that you would want to bestow on to somebody else? And maybe perhaps have you at some point bestowed knowledge to somebody else that was an up-and-comer that looked to you for advice?
Sure. First and foremost, you have to have the passion. And this is what I sell mostly, is because that's kind of what drives me. It's like, I love theater, but I'm a bass baritone who's an Asian guy. So it's like, good luck, doing things. But if you have the passion to do it, you'll find a way to do it. I think you have to know it's a passion. You have to know it's not just a hobby. It's not something that you can casually just climb into every now and then to have some fun. If you want to play with us, you have to take it seriously. It's a career, and you have to study up. You have to know what you're doing, and then execute with technique. And at the same time, know that you are going to be rejected a lot, most likely, and to keep persisting to do it and never stop until you get it. And if you don't get it before you die, but you never stop, then that's when I consider you successful, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So I would just say go for it. If you're in Texas, take Brittany's class. I don't know. Like, just be active about it. Like, be active about whatever you want to do. If it's voiceover, practice. If it's theater, practice. Yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, take Darren's class if you're in New York, because as evidenced by Daniel and many others, people who have taken it and proven their chops have gone on to be characters in the show. So
Yes, absolutely. Darren's class is great. It's excellent. It's an excellent thing. Actors Connection. Go for it. It's amazing.
He teaches you how to dub as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Very, very important to know how to do that going in, because it ain't easy. Cool. Right. Well, I guess that's gonna probably wrap us up here. So I guess as we're kind of closing things up, any other last things you want to put out there? Any other, I don't know, any stuff you've got coming up you want people to check out, or anything you want to? I mean, your Twitter is JackieDan513.
Yep, that'd be it.
And anything else you want to put out there for folks who are curious?
I don't know. Just if I can do anything, it's I don't have. I'm not a guy with a lot of credits. I'm not a guy with a lot of clout. But I am a successful performer, and I can tell you this: that as long as you have the passion to do it, you can do it. I should write a book. But I mean, it's like it's. You just got to go for what you want, and I see so many, including myself. I see so many unhappy moments in our lives, and I feel like with a little studying and a little effort, we could really do something. So that's what I'll leave you with.
For sure.
Yeah, man.
And where can people hear you on Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains? Where is Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains airing?
It's not here yet. I think Nickelodeon bought it. That's all I really know.
Okay.
Hopefully it comes out soon. It's going to come out soon.
Okay, cool. Features many friends. Scott, Jake Pake, Mark Thompson, many good folks in there as well. And what is your character in Vrains?
So I play, he's kind of like the rival wannabe. His name's Gore. They changed his name from Go to Gore.
Wow, that's like a reverse, like making it more inappropriate. By the way, can I say something? And at the risk of offending you, I hope, but I hope not. But it's funny to me because Aigami is one of the few characters where like, no, let's just leave his Japanese name in, and right. and you are of Asian descent. And yet Daniel Johnston Edwards is like the most like Americanized sounding name to me. Yeah. Because that to me sounds like oh, here's a character who's like, Ryuji Satoma or something in the Japanese version. Okay, we got to Americanize it now for Saturday morning or whatever. Daniel Edwards. There you go. That's this Yu-Gi-Oh! Character's name.
Hey, you know what? That's what being adopted is called.
No, but do you get people that are just like Daniel Edwards when they meet you?
Yes, and when people give referrals of from me for voiceover stuff, and they meet me and they're like, "You're an Asian guy," yeah. I'm like, "What?"
And
what?
So I am.
Yeah. So it's Gore, and then I also play the antagonist. He's the Seto Kaiba. His name's Varus. So both.
Cool. I do believe I heard a bit of you in the episode preview that they had at the end of. When they replayed the Yu-Gi-Oh! The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie in theaters, and they had a preview of Vrains episode 1 at the very end, which was fun to hear all y'all in there. But cool. Well, I think that's going to do it for now. So, Daniel, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to play with me for a bit. Yeah. And in the comments below, everybody, if you have any particular roles that you like and have heard and are looking forward to in various things that Daniel's done, or hell, if you've seen him on stage in the New York area, I want to see those people. Leave a comment on that if you happen to be of those people. I'm genuinely curious. And and then look forward to my next interview. I believe the next one will be our final interview for Voiceoctover this year. It's going to be a good one. And that'll do it. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you all on the next one. Fare thee well.
Thanks, Chris.